Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something quite profound, I think. It's this strange paradox. Why is it that the more people seem to have financially, materially, the more intense this fear can become, this fear of losing it all?
Okay.
We've got this image from our research, sort of a guiding metaphor. Someone's standing right on the edge of a golden cliff. Below them, endless wealth, success, everything they could possibly want, mansions, yachts, influence, you name it. Objectively, they've won. But internally, they're trembling, just filled with this sense of dread. And that's the illusion we want to unpack today, this idea that external stuff, the money, the status, can somehow silence that deep fear of not enough.
Right.
Our mission here is to explore why this fear isn't really about the dollars and cents. It's described as, well, an ancient wound, an internal state.
That image, the golden cliff, it really captures it perfectly.
Yeah.
Because when wealth is pursued as the answer to fear, it almost always fails. Money, used that way, just ends up reflecting the anxiety that was already there. We're looking at a state of consciousness, not just a bank balance.
It's not about financial literacy, it's about something deeper.
Exactly. Success doesn't magically erase anxiety. It just raises the stakes for the anxiety you already carried.
Yeah.
The money becomes this powerful mirror. If you look to it for ultimate security, it just shows you the scarcity you already believed in deep down.
Okay, so let's get into that internal condition, because that seems to be the absolute core of it all. Our sources pull a lot from Buddhist philosophy here using this metaphor.
Yeah.
The empty or cracked pot.
Yeah.
Can you sort of walk us through that?
Sure. Imagine your inner world, your sense of self-worth, your basic feeling of security as this vessel, this pot.
Okay.
Now you can pour the most wonderful things into it: success, money, praise, achievements. Let's call that the water.
Right, pouring in the good stuff.
But if the pot itself has cracks, maybe from old anxieties, feelings of unworthiness, deep-seated scarcity beliefs, well, the water just leaks out. It never stays full.
So the problem isn't the water or the amount of water?
Not at all. The problem is the container itself. The leak is internal. No amount of external pouring can fix an internal fracture.
That makes sense. So every win, every bit of success is just temporary relief.
Exactly. It feels good for a moment, then that underlying feeling of not enough just drains it away. So you find yourself constantly running back to the source, trying to fill a pot that just can't hold it. The real work isn't getting more water, it's mending the pot.
Okay, let me push back a little. For someone who's built something significant, maybe in a really competitive world, aren't the threats real? Market swings, competitors. Isn't some of that fear just rational vigilance?
That's a really important point. And yes, vigilance is necessary. We're not talking about ignoring real-world risks or abandoning sound financial planning. But we're looking at the nervous system's response. Is it proportional? Often what we see isn't just strategic caution, it's a deep, pervasive anxiety that goes far beyond the actual threat level. And this isn't a character flaw, It's often rooted in our basic survival wiring. Our brains evolved to scan for danger.
Right, the negativity bias.
Precisely. And when we achieve abundance, that ancient part of the brain doesn't just switch off. It sometimes misinterprets, wow, look how much I have now. You imagine how terrible it would be to lose it. So paradoxically, having more can feel like being more vulnerable.
So the vigilance gets amplified into something existential.
It can, yes. The feeling of threat becomes disproportionate. That's where this internal condition takes over from practical planning.
And that persistent low-level hum of unease, even when things are objectively good, that sounds like what the Buddhist tradition calls dukkha.
Exactly, dukkha. It's often translated as suffering, but that sounds so dramatic.
Yeah, it implies something huge and obvious.
Right. But often, especially with affluence, it's much more subtle. It's that nagging dissatisfaction, that feeling that something's not quite right, even in paradise. The sources call it the itch beneath the silk robe.
I like that, the itch beneath the silk robe. So it's like you're on that luxury vacation, but you can't fully relax. Or you achieve a huge goal, and immediately the anxiety shifts to the next one.
Precisely. Or constantly checking your phone, your stocks, your email. Because stillness itself feels vaguely threatening. There's this little voice whispering, this won't last, you're gonna mess it up, someone's coming for it.
And no amount of money silences that voice.
Not if that voice is running the show internally. The brain just keeps scanning for threats, and the more you have, the bigger the perceived threat of loss becomes. The fear center stays on high alert.
Wow. And this isn't new, is it? I mean, the texts mention Anathapindika, right? One of the Buddha's wealthiest followers.
Yes, a fascinating story. An incredibly successful merchant known for his generosity, his business sense. By all external measures, he had it made.
But inside?
He was apparently tormented, walking through his own beautiful gardens, not feeling peace, but haunted by visions of complete financial ruin. The more he had, the more vivid the nightmare of losing it became.
So what changed for him? What was the insight?
It wasn't about diversifying his assets. The realization was that his fear wasn't actually about losing the gold or the land.
What was it about them?
It was about losing his self, his sense of identity. He had unconsciously fused his entire being, his worth, his meaning, with his financial status.
So if the wealth disappeared, he would disappear.
That was the underlying terror. And when you anchor your sense of peace, your core identity, to something inherently changeable like the market or your health or public opinion, you're building on shaky ground.
Building your house on shifting sand, as they say.
Exactly. Because those things will change. It's their nature. Markets fluctuate, health fades, trends shift. Anchoring your fundamental worth there guarantees psychological turbulence. Every downturn feels like a personal annihilation.
So the issue isn't wealth itself.
Not according to this wisdom.
Yeah.
The Buddha never condemned wealth. He condemned attachment to it, the clinging, the belief that having equals being.
And that ties into anicca, right?
Okay.
Impermanence.
Precisely. The nature of all things is change. Real security, the kind that lasts, doesn't come from trying to freeze things or control the uncontrollable. It comes from understanding and accepting this flow of impermanence, from holding things lightly, enjoying success, yes, absolutely, but knowing its nature is transient.
Okay, holding it lightly. That makes sense philosophically, but it feels hard to do in practice, especially when modern science seems to back up how hard it is. You mentioned behavioral science.
Yes, there's a fascinating parallel here with loss aversion bias. It's almost like modern psychology found the mechanism for the suffering caused by attachment. Well, Buddhism says clinging causes suffering. Behavioral economics, through people like Kahneman and Tversky, shows us why we cling so hard, especially to what we have. They found that once your basic needs are met, getting more money doesn't actually boost long-term happiness very much.
Right, the hedonic treadmill idea.
Exactly. But losing money, that hits hard. The psychological pain of losing, say, $100 feels roughly twice as intense as the pleasure of gaining $100.
Twice as intense, wow.
Or even more in some studies. And this scales up. Imagine having a $50 million portfolio. Gaining another $5 million might feel nice, temporarily satisfying.
Okay.
But losing $5 million, that can trigger a primal fear response way out of proportion to the actual impact on your lifestyle. It feels like a threat to survival, even when it objectively isn't.
So that explains why someone could have immense wealth but still be constantly anxious about losing it. Their brain is wired to overweight the potential loss.
Absolutely. That's why, as the research suggests, the wealthy don't necessarily sleep better, they just sleep differently. They might not fear hunger, but they're haunted by this ghost of potential loss. Their focus shifts from expansion and possibility to defense and protection.
Which sounds exhausting, a state of chronic low-grade stress.
It can be incredibly taxing, yes, mentally and physically.
But again, if someone's truly incredibly wealthy, is a loss of, say, 10% really about survival? Or is it more about status, keeping score?
And that brings us to another key concept, tanha, usually translated as craving or thirst.
Right.
For someone struggling, tanha might be for basic needs. But for the affluent, it morphs. It becomes a craving to maintain the status quo, to keep score, to stay ahead, to control outcomes.
So it's still a craving, just a different object of craving.
Exactly. It's the engine of what we could call poverty of consciousness. You can have overflowing resources but still live from a place of inner lack, driven by this relentless need for more security, more certainty, more status.
Even if more isn't actually needed.
Right. Tanha often masks itself as positive traits: ambition, drive, prudence. But underneath, it's often that same old feeling. I'm not safe yet. What I have isn't enough.
That's the emotional scarcity you mentioned earlier, living in fear of loss, no matter what the bank statement says.
Yes, and we can even see this physically. Brain scans show that wealthy individuals who operate from this scarcity mindset still show heightened activity in the amygdala, the fear center, when thinking about money or the future.
So their body is still reacting as if there's an imminent threat.
Essentially, yes. The nervous system seems to hold on to old patterns. Maybe it was formed during leaner times, or maybe it was inherited.
Inherited, I mean genetically.
Less genetically, more through. Well, the stories and emotions we absorb growing up, the subconscious narratives.
Ah, okay. Like maybe your grandmother lived through the Depression and hoarded everything, even years later.
Exactly. Or the parent who, despite being successful, constantly warned it could all disappear tomorrow. never trust good times.
Those messages sink in deep, don't they?
They become emotional blueprints. A child absorbs the parent's underlying anxiety about money, even if the family is objectively comfortable. They learn that safety doesn't come from having enough. Safety comes from worrying enough.
Wow. So you could end up very wealthy yourself, but still feel intense guilt spending money or compulsively oversave because that underlying threat narrative is still running.
Precisely. You're rich in dollars, but poor in trust. Poor in the fundamental belief that life is supportive, that you can handle challenges, that abundance is okay. That lack of trust keeps the fear cycle going even when the money finally arrives. Success then feels less like freedom and more like a heavier burden to protect.
Okay, so if this fear is so deeply rooted, wired in, inherited, reinforced by our psychology, how on earth do we start to untangle it? It sounds almost impossible.
Well, the starting point, according to these wisdom traditions, is quite radical. It's about reframing the fear itself, not seeing it as an enemy to be crushed or suppressed.
Which is usually the first instinct, right? Get rid of this feeling.
Exactly. But instead view it as a signal, a messenger, maybe even a sacred signal.
Okay. A signal of what?
A signal pointing inward. The crucial first step is to meet the fear with compassion, not aggression. Imagine the fear is like a scared child inside you. Instead of yelling at it to shut up, you sit down beside it gently and you ask it kindly, what are you really trying to protect me from?
And the answer usually isn't just losing money.
Rarely. When you listen deeply, the fear is often protecting you from something else. The shame of perceived failure, maybe? The feeling of being powerless? The terror of being invisible or unimportant without the status symbol?
Those deeper wounds, the ones money can't actually touch.
Precisely. Those wounds don't need more accumulation. They need presence. They need acceptance. They need you to feel that potential emptiness without immediately rushing to fill it with the next deal or purchase. The fear starts to heal when you realize that the ruined self you dread is just a story, not your fundamental being.
Okay, so acknowledge the deeper wound, then what? How do you actively repair that cracked pot?
This is where practice comes in. And a key practice is dana, or generosity.
Right.
But not just writing a check.
Right, you said it's like psychological surgery.
It is. Because every act of intentional letting go of money, yes, but also time, attention, knowledge, acts as a direct counter signal to the scarcity mindset.
How does that work?
Each time you give freely, without expecting something back immediately, you're proving something to that anxious part of your brain. You're demonstrating, see, I let go of this and I am still okay. I am not diminished. I am whole, even without hoarding this resource.
It rewires the system through action.
Exactly. It builds the muscle of trust and sufficiency. And it doesn't have to be huge gestures.
Like what? What are some small ways?
Maybe giving someone your complete, undivided attention for 5 minutes. No phone, no distractions, just presence. That's a form of dana.
Okay.
Or sharing a helpful contact or piece of information freely without calculating what's in it for me. Dipping generously, not from obligation, but from a genuine feeling of, I have enough to share.
Micro acts of rebellion against the instinct to hold on tight.
Beautifully put. And think about Visakha, that other wealthy disciple. She funded huge projects, but the telling story is about her giving away her most prized possession, that incredibly valuable jeweled headdress.
People must have thought she was crazy.
They questioned her sanity, her prudence, but her response was profound. She said, essentially, what is given is not lost. It becomes a seed.
Ah, so the value didn't disappear. It transformed.
Precisely. It transformed from fragile external wealth, something that could be lost or stolen, into internal resilience, community goodwill, peace of mind, forms of capital that are immune to market fluctuations. That's the real alchemy.
Converting external assets into internal non-material security, that's powerful. And this connects to mindfulness too, right? Like cognitive behavioral therapy, but with an extra layer.
Yes, exactly. CBT say thoughts create feelings. Buddhism adds, awareness of thoughts creates freedom from them.
So not getting sucked into the thought.
Right. It's the practice of diffusion. You learn to observe the thought without automatically identifying with it. Instead of thinking, I'm terrified of losing everything, you notice, there's a thought about losing everything arising right now.
Like watching a cloud pass in the sky.
Perfect analogy. You see the thought, you acknowledge it, but you don't have to become the thought. You create space around it. And in that space, you realize you have a choice about how to respond, rather than just reacting automatically from fear.
How do you cultivate that space in daily life? It sounds good, but the thoughts can be so sticky.
Practice. Small rituals can help anchor it. For example, the sources suggest every morning, before you check your phone, your portfolio, your emails, just pause.
Pause. Okay.
Maybe put a hand on your heart, take a breath, and ask yourself gently, what do I already have right now that I often take for granted?
Not what I want to get, but what's already here.
Exactly. And the answer is never just the money. It's your breath, your health, even if imperfect, the quiet moment, a relationship, the ability to think.
Focusing on present sufficiency instead of future lack.
Yes. Doing this daily, even for 30 seconds, starts to retrain the mind. It shifts the default focus from what's missing to what's present. It cultivates the feeling of abundance as a current reality, not a future goal.
And this awareness, this space, it leads to even deeper concepts, doesn't it? Shunyata and anatta. Emptiness and no self. Those sound intimidating.
They again sound that way, especially emptiness. But shunyata isn't about nihilism or nothingness. It's more like boundless potential, openness.
With the sky analogy you go.
Exactly. Think of everything, your wealth, your status, your body, even your personality as clouds passing through the vast open sky of awareness. The clouds change, appear, disappear, but the sky itself remains untouched. Shunyata is realizing you are the sky, not just the clouds.
So if the market crashes,
Right.
a cloud dissolves. If the business fails, another cloud dissolves.
But the sky, your fundamental awareness, is unharmed, undiminished. That realization is the ultimate security. You can't lose the sky.
Wow. Okay. And anatta, no self.
That follows naturally. It's the insight that the self you normally identify with, the successful person, the anxious one, the one who needs to control things, is also like a cloud. It's a temporary collection of thoughts, feelings, roles, stories. It's not a fixed, solid entity.
It's a story I tell myself about who I am.
A constantly changing story. When you really grasp this, that your identity isn't this fragile construct tied to external things, the fear of loss loses its grip. Loss might happen to the story, to the clouds, but you, the awareness, remain. You can't be fundamentally lost if you aren't defined by things that are inherently temporary.
That's a huge shift in perspective. How do you actually live that? What are the practices to embody it, not just understand it intellectually?
Great question. The sources suggest some very concrete things. One is daily surrender.
Surrender, okay. How?
Before sleep, consciously pick one thing you've been clinging to that day. A worry about the market, a regret about a conversation, a tight grip on a plan for tomorrow.
Okay, identify the clinging.
And then actively release it. You can say inwardly, I let go of my need to control this outcome. I trust life to unfold. It's not about being passive or giving up. It's an active practice of trusting something larger than your own anxious efforts. Each small surrender builds faith and loosens fear's hold.
Like exercising a muscle of trust.
Exactly. Then there's cultivating beginner's mind, or shoshin,
Beginner's mind.
approaching situations, success, failure, fear, as if for the first time, stripping away the labels and assumptions based on past experiences.
So not immediately reacting with, oh no, this feels like that time when...
Right, instead, asking fresh questions. If I wasn't weighed down by the fear of losing it all, how would I approach this decision? Or, if my worth wasn't tied to this outcome, what would I truly value doing right now? It cuts through the fog of old fears and brings you back to the clarity of the present.
Where you often find you have more options, more freedom than you thought.
Usually, yes. And all of this naturally leads towards right livelihood.
Right livelihood. Making a living ethically.
It includes that, but it's deeper. When you've cultivated this inner sense of sufficiency, this inner abundance, when you know you are whole, regardless of the external score, your relationship with work and money transforms.
How so?
Money stops being the primary driver or the measure of your worth. It becomes a tool, a means for expressing your values, for creativity, for contribution. You work, invest, create, not primarily to get something you lack, but to express the wholeness you've already found. Wealth becomes less a fortress to defend and more a river to channel.
A means of expression rather than a source of validation.
Beautifully said.
So coming back to that person in the golden cliff, the answer isn't to jump off or build higher wall.
No, the path is inward. The core message really is that you can be financially successful and spiritually free. They aren't mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
But you have to consciously choose where you place your anchor,
In the shifting sands of the external world, the markets, the status games.
or in the stillness within. That unwavering awareness that witnesses both the gains and the losses without being defined by them.
And if someone listening is successful, but feels that deep restlessness, that constant fear,
Then that fear isn't a sign of failure. It's that sacred signal we talked about. It's guiding you toward the realization that The security you're seeking wasn't ever going to be found out there. The foundation was within you all along. You weren't actually lacking anything essential to begin with.
It's a call to come home to yourself.
Exactly. And perhaps the image of a tree helps ground this. A healthy tree draws sunlight, water, nutrients, but it doesn't hoard them.
Right, it doesn't worry about winter while it's summer.
It gives its leaves freely in autumn, its fruit when ripe. It thrives by participating in the natural cycle of giving and receiving, not by measuring what it keeps locked away. Its strength is in its connection to the whole system, its flow.
We are that tree.
We can be. Our wealth, our talents, our energy, they aren't just for us to possess. They gain true value when they circulate, when they're shared, when they transform into connection, resilience, and maybe even joy for others.
So the fear of poverty, real or imagined, doesn't end when the bank account hits some magic number.
No. It ends when you remember who you truly are, beyond the temporary labels and circumstances. You aren't the gold, which can be lost or tarnished. You're the awareness, the light, that allows the gold to shine in the first place.
And the path to that security, paradoxically, involves letting go.
It does, not building higher walls around what you have, but having the courage to open wider doors, to trust the flow, to share from a place of sufficiency, knowing that in doing so, you find the very security you were seeking all along.